Welcome to the Daily Lie of Omission, where you see and hear what 300 media executives try and censor from everything you hear and see. Today I'm going to catch up with the last of the interviews I conducted at the DNC convention in Philadelphia. First is with an interesting and well-read guy from Seattle who I think should run for Congress. His name is Sean Burke, author of Reset Our Government, and I think he'd make a great congressman who would serve America well. How do I know? Because he's out there right now on a discovery and information tour to make America a better place. From what I've seen of him, he's been working to make America a better place his entire life. You can view his website and buy his book at www.resetourgov.org. My next interview is with the extraordinary Keith McHenry of Taos, New Mexico, co-founder of Food Not Bombs, Vegan Peacenik, and author of a number of books on vegan food and nonviolence. This is an amazing story. It begins in the 1980s and spans the past 3 decades of Keith's pursuit of making America and the world a much better place. Of particular interest, you will find Keith's story of being tortured for serving free food at the United Nations 50-year anniversary party by the San Francisco Police Department and then hung from the ceiling for 3 days. I think you'll find it riveting. Keith also explains the educational process of our government's information extraction educational system, which normal people call torture, or the school of torture, in the Department of Defense, having been a victim of it. You can read more about Food Not Bombs at their website at www.foodnotbombs.net. So without further ado, the Daily Lie of Omission brings you Sean Burke and Keith McHenry, 2 American patriots. Hi, I'm here. It's Wednesday evening outside the DNC convention. I'm here with Sean Burke. Sean Burke, I forgot where you're from.
Seattle.
Seattle, Washington. Yep. And your organization is?
Reset Our Gov, and it's at resetOurGov.org.
Okay. We'll get that on. Sean, tell us what you're doing here and what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, 4 years ago I got concerned about the debt. Just something really hit me. Here, really have no one in Washington knows what they're doing as far as financial. They're all working for themselves. So I did my own research of what we can do. What can you hold up a sign or you sign a petition. I even looked at running for Congress, but I feel that we have to change this from the outside. So I decided to write a book because I feel like we have the only power we have that I found that I think people are missing because they decide not to vote. And that's a mistake. But for me, it's on how you vote. And I kind of rise above the parties because the parties are not part of the Constitution. It's not mentioned in the Constitution. George Washington warned against the parties. John Adams was very abhorrent of the parties. And so I really looked at that as well and went to the Constitution, and our only power, us, the citizens, really, is the vote. And I still think it counts. There's some people that think it doesn't matter what you do. I'm still thinking maybe it does count. Maybe not, but that's what I think. So my belief is you have 2 choices. You can give your representative a job, or you can take the job away. That's all you can do. You can't tell them how to vote. You can't tell them what to think. You can't tell them anything else except you. Hopefully we still have the power to give them a job or take it away. And I think all those people that opt out should actually go vote. And if they don't like what's going on with the government, minimally, just walk in and vote the person out who's in. Because they're in your government. So if you don't like them, well then give someone else new a chance. Because the House can be overturned every 2 years. We can roll that over. And the Senate in 6. So if you don't like what's going on in 2 more years, do the same thing. But if we roll this over, and and my concept is we roll this over, they're going to get that we're in charge instead of special interests or something.
That's a new concept.
There you go. Exactly. So I started a nonprofit and I got a motorhome. I wrapped it up. It looks really cool, and I'm on the road for a year from November 8th to November 8th. So we had almost 8 months. I went to the other convention in Cleveland, and now here, and I just continued for another 3 months.
So you're a nonprofit?
Nonprofit, nonpartisan, 501c3. Oh no, it's nothing to do with political. It's just a regular public benefit corporation.
Oh.
Because we can't advocate for any party, so that's how you get out of that. Don't advocate, you're just bringing them, and we aren't. This is all nonpartisan.
We do the same thing with the FTC and the education agency. And 50% of what you do has to be education. The rest of it, you can't be for the party or candidate. You can be a candidate.
I have another nonprofit in California called Paparazzi Reform Initiative. It's about privacy, and we've got 4 laws passed in the state of California on privacy law. And that one, we could lobby very little. No, it's a 501c4, so we were lobbying the state of California. So it's a little different. So anyway, that's the nonprofit.
Well, Sean, why don't you feel you're qualified to run for Congress?
I'm not sure I'm not qualified. My idea was, and I'm not sure you can change this from the inside. I actually know some good people that are in Congress, and I'm not sure it's them, but the system itself. When you get in, if you don't continue generating income to run, you're out. So you might as well just be out.
That'll change the system.
Right, and so one guy, I've seen some good people go in who intended to change the system. I really believe they intended to. And I think they couldn't do it, and they either joined it or what.
No,
So
you need probably 75% voting majority in order to change the system.
with the party, if we had a party going that way. But I disagree that we have to be separated on parties on some of this, especially the debt.
Absolutely.
I think it doesn't matter if Democrats or Republicans. If we don't have a financially stable country, it doesn't matter what social issues we care about. We're going to be in trouble worried about our money versus worried about all these other things. So first, no matter what party, I think we get financially stable, and for me, it's balanced budget. We'll never pay down debt, in my opinion.
I don't think you're going to do that until you change the system.
Well,
because the system, it's not only governance, daily governance system, it's also daily financial system. And my research clearly shows, there's only 2 forms of government. One where the government rules the country. The other one, people rule the government, and they both have totally separate daily operating lines of our government finance. You have to change that entire system in order to balance that system.
Well, of course, yeah. So the people, everybody I talk to agrees there's a problem. So if we take back control, then our representatives, who are us really, it's just members of us, go in there and go, look, we're going to balance this budget.
Congress is the people close to government.
It is. So, yes, it's going to be tricky to balance the budget potentially. Okay, what do we cut? Where do we cut? Make sure it keeps everything afloat. But it can and has to be done. Eventually, this comes to roost, and it doesn't matter what you and I think or anyone else, we're going to have a problem.
I just don't think we can vote to change the system.
Yeah, okay. I agree. Let's change the
That's
system.
what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what tracked you down.
Yeah, good. No, let's change the system. I mean, we're not changing the system from our Constitution. We're changing it back to the Constitution.
We're turning right, exactly.
We're bringing
changing
it back.
back
Yeah,
to
no,
the Constitution. We're bringing back the Constitution.
I don't believe that we need to do an armed overthrow of the government, where some people think, and then I think, well, what are we going to do? Write a new Constitution? We have a great Constitution.
Yeah.
Why would we do that?
Yeah.
In fact, the Founding Fathers designed it so we could overthrow our government whenever we wanted to.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, let's overthrow it.
What's wrong with us?
Yeah. Well, let's just do it.
Any last words?
Well, really, my message is for those who don't vote. There are too many people that are upset with what's going on. That they think I'm not going to do anything. Like, especially the Sanders groups. Anybody in the last election, 140 million people voted. So if they go vote, go in and at least tick the box for the new guy going in as replace who's already in. That's
There you go.
don't opt out. Throw out.
That's an easy thing.
Yeah, it's easy. That's the message. That's the simple message. They don't have to study the issues. Walk in, out, and they're done. 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's a great idea. All right, well, hey, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. It's been great to meet you in this process.
Yeah, it's been real interesting. It's been an education.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Sean?
Good. Perfect.
I got a good,
Cool, that'll work.
I'm with Keith McHenry here. co-founder of Food Not Bombs movement. Keith, tell me your impression of what's going on here this week.
Well, I've been really impressed by the fact that people really understand. Like, virtually everybody who run onto the streets are against the Democratic Party, and they're more progressive and more for like human rights and for peace, social justice, ending racism, ending police brutality, and that is not reflected by the Democratic Party. So I'm really impressed that people understand that, the DNC stole, you know, the chance of Bernie being nominated for president. They've done all kinds of dirty tricks, but it's not surprising because the DNC has been doing that for a long time, and I'm certainly not surprised that Hillary got the nomination and that and that all those emails that came out
Oh, sure.
that are just
WikiLeaks.
yeah, all the WikiLeaks I also am very impressed that Trump is calling on Russia to hack her like Libyan and State Department emails too. And I think it's very fascinating that the Democratic Party would blame Russia, which may be true, and trying to deflect attention towards that, than what really was in the WikiLeaks emails about how they were like trying to smear
Yeah,
Bernie and
creating an ad hominem argument to avoid dealing with the truth.
with the truth.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing too that I've noticed that the mainstream media hasn't covered yet is the hacking of the DNC by, say, if it's Russia. How is that? Only Trump himself has sort of mentioned this, and I'm no Trump supporter by any means. But that the fact that that's so similar to the fact that she's a State Department official, and could have had her personal email hacked by Russia as well.
Well,
And-
according to Julian is saying, he'll be releasing those tapes also,
yeah,
those emails.
yeah.
And, I mean, it could have been the Russians. It could have been any number of professional hackers, from what I understand.
But
In fact,
who cares? It's like
Right.
it shows that the Democratic Party is
what's the-
completely corrupt,
Yeah.
and we're going to find that Hillary is, equally as corrupt. That's why
Now-
they.
Now, let me ask you, up to this election, would you have been a Democrat?
No, I've been against the Democrats for a long time. I actually, when I found out Bill Clinton was going to come and announced he's going to run for president of the United States in San Francisco on the cable car. So I snuck into the area with a big piece of cardboard and a magic marker. And I wrote the 4 crimes that I knew of so far, Bill Clinton as a governor of Alabama. One of them was that he was the first governor to send the National Guard illegally to fight the Contra War in Central America. He also, and I happen to have friends that were protesting outside of his mansion against his involvement in Iran-Contra in the
Oh, sure.
with Hassan
Mean Airport and
yeah,
the whole thing.
yeah. So he was involved in that, and then he also, I forget what the fourth one was, but the third one was that he executed Ricky Ray Rector, and Ricky Ray was getting his final dinner. He was a person with Down syndrome. He said he would come back after the execution for his ice cream, and not knowing that when you get executed, you cannot come back to the cell and get your ice cream. So for him to do that as a political move to help win the election, so already before he became a president,
You were onto him.
I was onto him. So and if this is what I worry about in this particular election, like with Bill Clinton when he got elected, people were really outraged and in the streets against Bush Sr. There was huge protests against it. The 45-day Desert Storm war, all the horrible stuff that went on with that. I was out on the streets the whole 45 days. We shut down the federal building in San Francisco. There was up to 1 million people on each weekend against that war. When Clinton came in liberal San Francisco, the protests just got really small. Went on for 8 years. Bill Clinton, according to the United Nations, killed 750,000 children in Iraq through the no-fly zone that he did during that 8 years of his administration. He waged an entire war that, according to the United Nations, 1 million civilians lost their lives in 8 years of Bill Clinton. Yet Americans are going, what? But it's easy to find out.
Oh, he put the whole Al Qaeda movement on its feet by taking out Kosovo
Yeah.
and leaving it without a government, which they then took over.
Correct. I've been in Bosnia and Herzegovina and all throughout the former Yugoslavia. When I showed up to visit Funat Bombs in Belgrade, I happened to be reading a book by Michael Moore. And they wanted to know if there was bowling for Columbine was true. Did we really have guns in America and so on? And I said, wow, isn't that weird? I'm reading this book. Hey, dude, where's their country? But he's supporting Wesley Clark for president of the United States. Wesley Clark, he bombed us. They start telling us a crazy story. So Emma, who was one of the Funat Bombs volunteers, we're actually in a building hit by a cruise missile that did not detonate. And we're using the crater made by the cruise missile as our toilet. And we're in there with lights rigged up from a power line from a neighboring building. And she starts to tell me about they all tell me, but Emma particularly was very moving. She goes, look, I am studying medicine at the university here, and my work as a nurse is at the special hospital for just children who are so severely deformed because of the depleted uranium dumped on our country that we have 750 people, some with 2 heads, some with 5 arms, and all this. This is all from the United States using depleted uranium on our country.
Wow.
It's really heavy. And they said cruise missiles would come down the street and then all of a sudden veer off and blow up a building, and they were like in total panic. The thing that also that really moved me is I got on a train from Serbia, from Belgrade to go to Budapest, and this guy is in the car. He sees I got an American passport. He doesn't want to really talk to me, but when the conductor comes by, I get to talking to him anyway. He tells me he's a lawyer for United Nations trying to create the Constitution for Kosovo. He says he's like 85 years old. He went out of retirement to help with this. He'd been in the Alps against Adolf Hitler. He's German. He said, look, I have to deal with Americans every day when I go to negotiate this Constitution. They're frightened. Blackwater is frightened. Said, you better get your passport and be ready. I mean, you better be prepared to leave and flee your country, because under Clinton and under Bush, it's so frightening. You just don't know where your country's going to go to. You could end up in basically a fascist country and not be able to escape. I experienced that under Adolf Hitler. That was his opinion. So it's quite frightening. So all along, I've been completely organizing against. The Democratic Party's have never been a friend of mine. I tried to negotiate with Nancy Pelosi I used to walk my dog with her chief of staff in San Francisco, Michael Yaki, in Mountain Lake Park. And so we were being beaten and jailed virtually every day for feeding the hungry in San Francisco. And we thought, well, maybe Nancy could speak out against the human rights violations on the homeless here in San Francisco and against the violence against Funat Bombs. And she would never do anything about it. And eventually, Amnesty International declared us prisoners of conscience. I was one of the first white people to face the California 3 strikes law. I did 500 days there. Democratic Party were in the actual leadership of the city. They were also the assembly people from our
They had
district.
you in jail for 500 days?
I would be jailed for 3 days and then 5 days
Off?
I was arrested 97 times according to, 94 times according.
They beat you in jail?
Well, they did a little worse than beat me in jail. They beat me out in the streets. I was clubbed between the eyes and had 2 surgeries. But probably the worst violence against me, I was beaten a number of times by both people, a number of times by vigilantes that are associated with the police, but also by police. But also I was actually taken into police headquarters, had my clothes stripped off of me, was lifted by my arms and legs and had my ligaments and tendons ripped and stuck in a stress position cage for 3 days.
Holy smokes.
And that happened to me 3 times.
Holy smokes.
And I became very disabled at a point. I actually fortunately overcame it, but I was in severe pain for 19 years.
Oh, yeah.
And the stress position cage was hanging from the ceiling, It was in room 136 in 850 Bryant Street in San Francisco. I have got my phone was, according to a memo by the San Francisco Police Department, they wiretapped my home phone on September 27th, 1988. And then they listened to a phone conversation I was having, which we were saying that we're going to share vegan food at a protest in Washington, D.C., another protest in Boston, and one in San Francisco. The first time we shared food at 3 different locations in protest of the war in El Salvador. Very excited about it. But I was not part of the organizing of the protest or anything. They claimed I was going to bring 3,000 people to the protest and take over the Presidio, which at that time was a military base.
So you were a terrorist.
Well, I was declared one of America's most hardcore terrorists, and Food Not Bombs was listed as one of America's most hardcore terrorists in 1988. And so, how we learned this is on Thanksgiving. We have a button that has this logo on it, and people would go home for Thanksgiving. And one of my volunteers from San Francisco Food Not Bombs, she stayed with her friend in Santa Rosa, California. When her husband came back from the National Guard, he said, "Oh, wow, you've got the Food Not Bombs button. We just studied them in domestic terrorism class. That's one of America's most hardcore terrorist groups." I kept getting stories like that from people who were stopped by uniformed National Guards people in airports after that holiday. They would call me, or they would tell me, "Oh my God, they say that they just had a class on you. You're one of America's most hardcore terrorists." So then in April of 2009...
Keith, let me stop you a second.
Yeah.
You don't look like a terrorist to me.
No,
You don't talk like a terrorist. I don't think you're a terrorist.
I'm definitely not a terrorist. I've written books on nonviolence.
Yeah.
I have been actually convicted and framed for violence, interestingly enough. I had a case where in the first day of the current war in Iraq, back in March 20th of whatever year that was, like years ago.
Yeah.
I lived in Tucson, Arizona. I brought food to the protest all day outside the federal building. Towards the end of the protest, I've got a chair up against a fountain. These 5 Marines in off-duty, but in Marine T-shirts, marched down the street with one of them with a bullhorn yelling, "Hippies go home, commies go home and watch CNN," and they're all pissed off. One guy pushes this African-American guy really hard in the chest and calls him a nigger or something like that. The guy with the bullhorn gets up behind me, and he's trying to stand on the fountain. His bullhorn is very heavy, so he ends up tilting towards me. He's right above my head, so I get out of my chair and move to the side. He is kind of shocked by that and falls back into the fountain. He gets out of the fountain, starts yelling that I pushed him. This officer from the police department comes up, "Thank you, Keith, for pushing him in the fountain. That's great." I get arrested for assault. I then have a pad of paper, fortunately, there, and people all write their names and phone numbers, everyone that witnessed. I had this huge list of people. We decided to only put 5 of the maybe 25 witnesses on the stand. Every one of them said that they were there from this angle in great detail, and I never touched the guy. The only person to say that I touched him was the Marine himself. The judge convicts me of assault. We appeal and we lose the appeal. I'm ordered to do, I don't even know what my penalty is supposed to be, other than I do get it's like $496 bill to rebuy the bullhorn. Moved from Tucson. People then send me links to newspaper articles that the man who I supposedly assaulted gets arrested and convicted of selling cocaine to the kids at Amphi High School. But now I have this assault conviction. Also, when I faced the California 3 strikes law, they would bring riot police into the courtroom each time that I was to go to court. And it was really clear that it would be really hard to get a fair trial there. So eventually I pled out to credit for time served, 500 days, which is where the number comes from. That's what the district attorney said. And a year's probation. I was able to write my own probation where I wasn't allowed to bomb anyone or kill anyone for 12 months. but I could be arrested for other things because they were, and was arrested a number more times for feeding the hungry. So I got convicted, even though I never would touch anybody and I never hit anybody. I got assault, battery, and strong arm robbery. So that's actually, both of those things have caused me problems. I have a difficult time getting into Canada because of it, even though I'm a nonviolent activist. I have to show Border and Customs my books on nonviolence and tell them my whole story about starting Food Not Bombs and how I feed the hungry and how I got framed. And sometimes it'll take me a couple of days to get into Canada.
Wow.
For a long time, I was taken off of planes. I've had my vehicle rushed by U.S. Border Patrol at gunpoint and pulled out and made to walk backwards into custody and so on. I was actually taken off a plane in Chicago O'Hare and questioned by Homeland Security for an hour about my involvement in the violent group Food Not Bombs. And then in 2009, in April, they aired twice a lecture by a State Department official comparing Food Not Bombs to Al-Qaeda, who's more dangerous. And they claimed that Food Not Bombs was more dangerous because we're convincing the American public that money should be diverted from military spending towards education, healthcare, and other social services. And that we were friendly people that gave out this vegan meals, and people really liked us. And they said, Food Not Bombs is likely to go on, or they called us the people that share vegan meals in the park. They never used the name Food Not Bombs. The people that share vegan meals in the park are likely to go on another 30 years. So that May, we would have been 30 years old. Said Al-Qaeda will not last even another 20. I happened to see that twice. Once after I spoke in Princeton, and once after I spoke at Harvard. I happened to come home after my lecture, tune in and see this C-SPAN lecture.
Wow.
So
and,
that's the...
And what years were when you were locked up in San Francisco, put on a rack, stripped naked?
Okay, I was actually framed and tortured in '94, but I first was arrested on August 15th, 1988. I was then I was arrested a number of times in '89, quite a number of times, and I was beaten by people that when we would go to court and we'd do discovery, we'd find out the civilian that attacked me on the street was actually either an informant or they were part of a neighborhood association that was part of the police department's infrastructure of spying. When my first book came out, I was doing a book opening at a bookstore on Haight Street, and the police came into the bookstore and arrested me. When we did the discovery on that criminal case, we found out that the informant was actually a paid informant who had the apartment intentionally across from the bookstore because it was an anarchist bookstore, and he reported on everybody that came in and out of that house. The man who was a very nice man that I welcomed every day for several years outside the Food Not Bombs garage where we stored our belongings. He had a little black poodle. When we ended up in a criminal case and we got discovery, we turned out he had filed a report every single time any of us unloaded or loaded the garage. And he'd say what we brought out and what we put in and how many people were there. And there was dozens, went there every day. So he walked his dog and reported on what we did virtually every day for the whole time we rented that garage. Wow. So
it was in '94 that they tortured you.
Yeah, they
put you in this box.
Yeah, they put me in the stress position cage 3 times. So what the logic of this, they don't ask you questions or anything. And I actually was celebrating my birthday on the Bosphorus, and it was right after Abu Ghraib. So the conversation came to torture. Turned out that everyone at my birthday party had been tortured, except for my girlfriend who was Turkish, who was the only one that had not been tortured.
Who were they tortured by, and where were they tortured?
Everybody was tortured by the Turkish government, and it was either because they were Kurdish or they were left-wing activists.
Except you were tortured.
I was the only one tortured in the United States. Not one of us, 7 people that were tortured in that birthday party out of 8.
Wow.
all 7 of us, none of us were asked a question, even though technically speaking, torture is when you get your undergraduate degree in torture, it's called information extraction. And for the Army, you're taught information extraction at Fort Huachuca in Arizona. To get your master's degree in information extraction, you go to Fort Ord, or you used to go to Fort Ord. I don't think they do it there anymore. And you can get a master's degree in information extraction, and
Which is torture.
which is torture, but that's what they call it. To make and the whole idea that they're like torturing you to get information is a misnomer. They're not doing that. The only reason they're not killing you, and they're torturing you instead, is to send you back out in the community, so that the other activists and stuff said, "Man, I'm not going through that. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm not going to any protests." It's a message to the
Now,
community.
what is this confinement box you're talking about?
Well, the
What is it?
stress position cage, I learned the technical name of it by a veteran who had done the same things, ripped their ligaments and tendons and put them in a stress position cage at Bagram Air Base. And we also, and Naomi Klein writes about the stress position cage in her book, Shock Doctrine. In Vietnam, the U.S. used it there. So what happens is that once your ligaments and tendons are ripped, which is like the rack, right? That would be the medieval version of the rack. They put you in this box so you can't stretch your legs out. So for the first while, you're spending all your time trying to get your butt in one corner and your legs in the other corner to stretch out. That's all you can think about. You're just obsessed with, and you can't. So by the end of 3 days, and apparently 3 days is a really good time length, but some people can stay in there for years, needless to say. Sadly, in Afghanistan, probably that's what happens. In Vietnam, that's what was happening. Then you get out, you can't, your legs hurt so bad, you can't believe it. So the first time my legs hurt for months, and I seek medical treatment, and I got acupuncture and so on. Then the second time, it was months more.
How big is the box?
It's a cage, like, I don't know, it's hard to say. It's like you can't, you curl up in it, and you can't get your butt up in it. And you want to pee and poop, you just go out the side. And they give you, like in my case, what I got was to keep you alive. They would give you a little 8-ounce white styrofoam cup of water every once in a while. And you're in the dark, and it hangs from the ceiling. And
In
you just
America?
In America, yeah, that was in San Francisco.
In San Francisco?
Yeah, and I actually had, the reason
Original home of the United Nations.
Yeah. In fact, I was getting beaten and jailed at UN Plaza during the 50th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations, when there was the mayor who was ordering the arrests and beating, Frank Jordan, was dedicating the monument to the Universal Declaration of the Universal Declaration of Rights. He had a monument there, which one of them was the right to protest, and there was Article 27, the right to food. And yet he had riot police out there beating the crap out of us for sharing free food. And we had 2 permits by the Board of Supervisors to serve food at UN Plaza. Well, it turned out they were the only place they could issue a use permit was UN Plaza. But the mayor and the police ignored the fact that we had 2 permits. We bought liability insurance, insuring the city for $1 million liability. We had 2 environmental health permits for food sanitation. But they were removed because they wouldn't honor the land use permit, not because we gave away bad food or something like that. And so ever since that 10 years of struggle against the city and county of San Francisco, we've had a policy of never applying for a permit. Because it's just, a permit is something that can be given to you to take away. That's the purpose of it. If you don't apply for it and you don't have it, they can't take it away from you. And it's our right, First Amendment right, to give away things like food. Food's not a controlled substance. I'm not giving away heroin or crack on the street. I'm giving away vegan, organic food. They can't, it's a gift. If you don't want it, you don't have to take it. And I have no economic advantage to be giving you bad food. There's no reason. Why would I want to be helping you by making you sick? I would never do that. That's why it's vegan. That's why, in as many cases as possible, it's organic. And as a result of those beatings and my facing life in prison, there's now that helps spur a moment, spawn a movement. And there's groups in over 1,000 cities of the world and over 60 countries. And we have two groups, for instance, in Burma. We have four groups, we believe, in Turkey now, even under martial law. We have a group in Belarus who has been harassed endlessly by the Stalinist government of Belarus. We have several hundred groups in Russia, at least 200, but we don't know the number. We have 100 in Indonesia. We were sharing food in Iceland. It's been it's amazing, all the places Food Not Bombs has been. So you can find your viewers can find out more about us at foodnotbombs.net, and it's an all-volunteer movement with roughly 10,000 volunteers. And some of the other projects we've started are like Homes Not Jails, where we take over abandoned buildings and house the homeless that are buildings foreclosed on by the banks. We do organic gardening with Food Not Lawns. We have the really, really free market where we go out free everything. So there's like a whole world of things that we do. So now we're going to go to the main gate here at the DNC, set up our information and our banner, and we're going to protest the policies of the Democratic Party.
When are you going to do that?
Right now.
I'll have to go film it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. They say that people that have been tortured, it just irons their resolve.
It certainly
Sounds
does.
Like that's okay.
Exactly. So
Well,
contrary to what the military and police think, it just makes you a lifelong person dedicated to social justice.
Thank you for your
Thank you
service.
so much. Thank you so much. Beautiful.
All right. That was a very interesting and unexpected interview with Keith. Didn't get his last name. Keith McHenry, co-founder of Food Not Bombs movement. And I don't know, I guess we're going to go watch Keith maybe get arrested again, and maybe we'll share some of his vegan food. Hopefully we won't end up in jail, tortured, hung in a cage, our ligaments stretched and torn in America. Well, this kind of shocked this reporter for the Daily Lie of Omission, and I guess I'm out of words.
Would you like to share the Daily Lie of Omission and help spread the word about liberty? Everything runs on money, but I think you should get something for your hard-earned dollars when you donate. If you are so kind and inclined, I would ask you to click on www.scienceofliberty.us and purchase The Science of Liberty, American Reformation, and or New American Revolution, the constitutional overthrow of the United States government. Both are serious studies into the science of liberty and what our age of revolution is brought, along with the amazing history of what you were never taught in school. Part of your purchase price will go towards financing electing new Congress, a registered super PAC, and Liberty Legislation's campaign to restore liberty in America. Thanks for listening, and God bless. I'm your host, William W. Fawell. Surf's up, America!